Hey everybody, and welcome to the Twist Happy Hour, where conversations and cocktails collide. I'm Keryn, joined by my friend Kate, and you are in for a doozy today. So let's jump right in. Today, I'm going to be making the cocktails. So we're going to make a Rosemary Reverie, which I just put up on the site, and I will link in the show notes. So you need your gin, your lemon, some blackberry, and some rosemary simple syrup. And that's easy to make. I have all of it on the site. Don't worry.
I'm not making that because I have none of that. I have gin,
You have gin?
and I have nothing else. I don't even have lemon. I could just drink straight gin, I guess.
Okay, so I'm going to use my handy cocktail shaker. By the way, these are the best ones. It's like a Boston cocktail shaker. I can't remember what it's called. But we're going to put 2 ounces of gin over here, some lemon juice, some blackberry puree. Yeah. And it was really just like 4 blackberries that I mushed together that I threw in there.
Is this the Roku gin?
Yes, I like Roku gin for these kind of things. And then we have our rosemary simple syrup. And then we're going to make this a sour, which means there's like a little egg white on it. But because I am shooting this for the podcast and not in my kitchen where I can deal with eggs, I'm going to try out this fee foam, which should do something similar. We'll see.
Okay.
Supposedly you just put like a couple drops. Oh, that's a lot of drops. It might be very busy. Before you put ice in.
Really interested to see the faux.
Well, you can also use chickpea water. Chickpea water is the vegetarian, vegan, whatever version of egg white.
Okay, yeah. That's interesting.
So you could have
chickpea water is very foamy.
It is. So I'm going to do a dry shake, which means that there's no ice in it yet. So you do that because
I knew. I'm not a total dum-dum. I knew that.
I didn't know that that's what it was called. All right, we're going to pretend that that was enough. It's a little foamy. Oh God, I'm going to stain everything in my house. And then we're going to...
Don't wear your white shirt for this cocktail.
I know. Like, there's the ice. Again, it's easier to do this when you have a kitchen at your disposal.
It sounds better when you get cocktail.
All right. Oh, and then I have to get this off.
She's a regular Tom Cruise, this one.
I am. Oh, and my hands are all slippery. Get it off. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to get my little strainer thing and hopefully
This drink mixer is complicated. Oh, I like the glass.
The glass and the color is like amazing. Okay, the foam, I don't think I shook it enough. The foam's not working as well as it should have, but it's still going to be delicious. And then I stuck a sprig of rosemary into a blackberry.
Oh, it's so cute.
On these cute little like cocktail picks that I have. So
These are so fancy.
I'm so fancy as I do.
You know what?
There you go.
For the average person, they're just going to be like, whatever, garnish. I don't even care. So it's...
I'm like, my recipe how-to videos are way more put together than this.
But also, like, the reality is after like one drink, you're probably dumping half of it on the counter and spill it everywhere. Who cares? You know what? Just have fun. It's fine.
So what are you going to drink? Because I know you don't
have Scotland's specialty. I'm going to have a little bit of drambuie.
Okay.
Now, you can't have a lot of this because it'll put you on your arse. But it is Scotch whiskey aged with heather, honey, herbs, and spices. And it is not for everyone. I will tell you that. I have had whiskey drinkers that were like, no.
It's like, no, never.
But it is very good for a cold evening in Scotland. This is the bottle I got in Scotland, and it's almost empty, so I have to go back.
Darn research trip. I think we should go shoot on location.
Oh, perfect. We have to go to Malta, and then we'll go.
Malta and Scotland and back to Ireland. And
perfect.
We have a little world tour going on.
World tour. A drinking world tour. It's just like at Epcot. You do it there.
It just takes a couple more miles and probably about the same amount of money.
Yes, that would.
It's Epcot versus Europe. Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
So I think we're going to talk about Elle Woods, because obviously she's an icon, and habeas corpus, which apparently the United States government administration is trying to rescind. They're looking into it, is what Stephen Miller has said. He's like, well, we're just looking into it. And for those of you that don't know, habeas corpus is the thing that makes it so that you get a free and fair trial. So really all of the rights that you have in not being arrested and immediately thrown in jail forever to rot live in that habeas corpus world.
Well, the interesting thing is habeas corpus applies to US citizens and non-US citizens.
Yeah, the Constitution actually has it that way on purpose. The founding fathers were like, hey, a lot of people are coming here from other places and they're not US citizens yet, because that was back in the olden days and people were just rocking and rolling, you know. And so they wanted to make sure that everyone got a free and fair trial.
Well, because they weren't even technically, like, none of them were born US citizens. So, like,
Yeah,
what, the third or fourth president, I think, was the very first, like, US born president.
I have no, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I can't remember. I looked it up.
But yeah, it is extremely important. And, you know, it's funny because all of the people who are constitutionalists, which they great, let's make sure that we know all of the amendments. I've found that some of our leaders don't know all of the amendments. But if you're a constitutionalist, this should be really important to you. It should be the thing that you're kind of going, wait, why is this going to go away? You know, for what it's worth.
I
We
mean,
kind of need it.
we can't just ship everybody off to Australia like they did in colonial times
Ooh,
when people are bad, but apparently now we're shipping them all off to El Salvador when we don't agree.
I'll go to Australia. Is that an option?
Oh yeah, Australia now. I'm like, they have a
If
very
anybody
good
wants to ship me to Australia, free flight to us, I'll take it. I will take it. It was funny. My mother said the other day, she goes, if they deport me, can I pick where I go? And I said, because she thinks my mother is Irish and she thinks that she will just get deported to Ireland. And I was like, well, no, that's not how they're doing it these days. So, yeah, there's a lot of, I'm curious as to why they are choosing to send people to like Sudan who are not from Sudan. Because at that point, you're not really deporting them, right? Deportation is sending them back to the country of origin. So at that point, you're just shipping people. It's like a Timu.
Well, it was like, okay, is this going to the highest bidder of who will take? Because we're paying El Salvador to take all these people.
Sure. Yeah.
So are other countries getting on board with it?
Are the countries that these people are from not bidding? Like, are they?
No idea.
How does it work? I don't know how it works. I feel like no one knows how it works. And that is
well, because it's not supposed to be happening. Like, it's unconstitutional. It violates the First Amendment or something like, no, not the first one, the first part of the Constitution. I got that great book. I'll just have to read that on the podcast one day.
And if you watched Legally Blonde in the famous Elle Woods way, she screams habeas corpus, but it is not in line with what habeas corpus actually is.
Well, it's the scene when Jennifer Coolidge, right? When she goes to get her dog from her ex-boyfriend. And yeah, Elle Woods from Legally Blonde.
She says, due to habeas corpus.
And like, basically it's like common law marriage and common property, but habeas corpus has nothing to do with that. But I think that's when a lot of people in our generation and probably the next one all were like, what, habeas corpus? What is that?
And I think that it would be great if maybe some people in the current administration could watch that movie and learn some like actual legal terms and how legality works. Because apparently they're also just throwing around legal jargon that they're not really sure.
Well, but the problem is if they watch it, maybe they'll think that common property law is habeas corpus. I feel like that would be, they're like, it's a movie, obviously, it's true.
Well, and what's really fun is Kristi Noem was asked about this in a congressional oversight hearing, and somebody said, do you know what the First Amendment is? Do you know, like they were asking, and she was like, I'm not exactly sure. And I thought, I bet she knows what the second one is, though. Got that one memorized. Maybe
everybody has that one memorized.
Maybe read them all, Kristi. It's just, you don't have to take my advice, but I'm just saying, maybe read them all.
Oh my gosh.
It's an idea.
That book that, like, the book that I got when we were in Key West at the Little White House that basically breaks down the entire Constitution and all the amendments. It's like the Shakespeare Cliff Notes version where it's like the original language of the Constitution, what it means, how it's been interpreted through the law, and everything like that. And I'm like, this is fascinating. Like, I mean, I grew up learning all this. I took AP US government and politics and American history and all that stuff. But I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think any of us have ever like fine-tooth combed through the Constitution and gone, but this was affected by this amendment. And this was like, it kind of draws all those lines. So I told my kids they have to read it this summer if they want to play video games.
I think that's great. I think that, maybe we should send it to Congress.
one.
see if they could maybe read through it for a hot minute. There's a lot of, my dad was such a constitutionalist and such a history nut, really. And it's funny because he used to constantly scream out everything that was, this was unconstitutional, this is unconstitutional. And he's not here anymore. And there's a part of me that is really relieved he does not have to live through this. Because he would be calling me daily and be just screaming at me.
That would be a heart attack in the making for many.
But I think really what it comes down to for me is people who are really gung-ho in support of this administration. If they start, and now this is an amendment, right, that they're talking about, they're looking into suspending, right? They've talked about getting rid of birthright citizenship. So they're quite literally altering the Constitution. Is there any concern for people on the right that they may alter amendments that they feel really strongly about, like their Second Amendment rights? I always kind of like, if they can finagle one, they can finagle another.
Yeah.
Except
and it's for the amount of money going behind the Second Amendment, as opposed to the birthright rights and everything like that, which the only way the United States was possible was because of birthright rights.
Birthrights, I know. That's why it's how my mother is here.
Yeah. It's how all of half my relatives, the other half came right after the Mayflower.
That was my dad's side.
I think I'm as U.S. white as white could be.
I think that the real thing that people need to think about is, and I I've been saying this for a while with the election and everything. No one is thinking more than one step ahead. They're like, great, I want to get rid of birthright citizenship. Done. Have a great day. Great, I want to suspend habeas corpus. But this sets precedent. So law is all based on precedent, right? And lawyers that are watching, I know I'm going to get this wrong. I'm not a lawyer. Law is all set on precedent. The way that court proceedings work, it is all precedent. So if you are a staunch conservative Republican today, do you think for the rest of your life you are going to have a staunch conservative Republican administration? Because if you're not, this is dangerous ground if you let one person change it.
Yep.
Any possibility of the left getting into the administration again, it's open. It's wide open now.
Well, yeah, because now you're setting precedents, which is what the Supreme Court's all about. They set a lot of precedents, which is when they go back to old court cases, and then they come through and they're like, no, because of X, Y, and Z's ruling, now we can do X, Y, and Z. So they are currently setting new precedents, but it's also why they're knocking down some of these things. And I think you're right. No one's looking further down the line. They're just like, yay, we won. And it's like, well, no, but it's also I keep lamenting to my husband about this whole Harvard, rival, whatever rift that's happening. And I'm like, why is this what we are spending money on and we are spending time on? And my husband's like, smoke and mirrors. Because everybody's like, yeah, down with the rich, elite, blah, 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 blah. Well, over here, what's all happening when we're like, Harvard? No, now we're taking away all of these rights. We're going to get rid of people. We're not going to let international students in. I'm sorry. How do you think education's paid for?
Yeah.
This is why out-of-state kids and international students are vital to the university system, because they pay for the room and board. They pay the exorbitant in-state fees. If I can pay my kids to stay in California so they don't get themselves in debt, I'm bribing my oldest with a scooter. I'm like, I'll buy you a Vespa or whatever, Honda style, whatever of that, because I don't want you to get into the debt that my generation had to get into. And if you can go for $13,000 to UCLA as opposed to $60,000 to University of Maryland or wherever, because we don't live there anymore, I'm like, no, it's not cool. Don't do it.
I think the other thing that people forget is, so the argument is that we don't want people here from foreign lands on student visas because they're going to get the engineering degree. They're going to get the, all of these different, infrastructure, IT, all of these different degrees, and they're going to go back to their home country. And we as Americans are losing out. But the fact of the matter is, the statistics say that more of those people stay in this country, get their citizenship legally, and are benefiting our economy, our infrastructure, all of the things that make this country work and function and are great. And I think that there's this kind of false narrative that they all just up and leave as soon as they graduate. and with their MIT degree and head back to, China, India, wherever they may be. That's just not the case. And anybody who has ever been to university, like look at the statistics of just Americans that, like, you're in Florida, you go to school in Maryland, you stay in Maryland, you go to school, like, that's just a lot of the time, that's how it works, right?
Well, because also companies are recruiting from these schools. I mean, just when we lived in Seattle, if you just looked at like Bellevue, Redmond, and Kirkland, which were the suburbs outside of Seattle, huge populations of Indian tech engineers, everybody, because Microsoft's there, Expedia's there.
Google. My husband's company is based out of Bellevue, and he is one of the few white guys that works for them.
Well, it's even like the school districts had to put in place that if you like miss more than 3 consecutive weeks of school, you had to be unenrolled, because they had so many kids and families that would go back for like the month of December and visit family in India and China and Japan or wherever. And they were like, we don't know how to hold these kids' spots while still making it available to other kids who are coming in. And we're not sure if you're coming back, So I'm like, there's a whole different, precedence that they're trying to figure out, because nobody wants to deny a kid education. Well, okay, nobody of sound mind wants to deny kids an education, but it is one of those, okay, when it comes down to money and who gets what, and is there space in did you come back or did you stay with grandma?
Well, and I think it goes back to the whole, are they thinking about this a step further? These people, like people on H-1B visas, right? They're bringing their family over. Well, now their kids enrolled in school. Well, they're going to stay. They're going to stay and go about it the legal way. They're going to go, get their citizenship. They're going to stay at a company like Microsoft, and it's interesting because the Americans are allowed to get into the same programs, there's no holdback, right?
They're not taking someone's spot.
They're not. And I can tell you right now, my husband is a whitest white guy. And he is working alongside a lot of people on H-1B visas, because in India, that is the thing they are pushing the most in education is information technology, because obviously the world is going the way the world is going, right? It makes sense to do that. The United States isn't necessarily pushing that. We have a few schools that's like a specialty, but it's not something that we're necessarily pushing. So it all kind of fills a gap. It all fills a spot. And I think that that's really important for people to think, like, down the road, how does this work? So I truly don't think people are taking it, okay, well, what's going to happen next? It's like we stop at point A and we never go to point B, point C, and I think that's really problematic because, again, we have this administration now, but it's not going to be forever.
Yeah. Well, unless another law is changed that you can just take over and keep getting elected.
Things change, right? So it's like, but if you set the precedent of changing, birthright citizenship, and JD Vance is so concerned about the birth rate in the United States. Okay, great. What if it continues to fall and we lose, like, years and years, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now, we are at like 20% of the population we were, because we're also not doing birthright citizenship. You're losing Americans that way. You're
losing tax dollars that way.
You're losing tax dollars. You're losing population. And if that's something that you're really concerned about, then that should be a major, flag for you. But I don't think that people are thinking it all the way through down the line.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think when you just shake your fist at something you don't agree with, but you're not actually digging in, that's a problem. But that's all the time we have for today.
Tune in next time for more Habeas Corpus.
More Habeas Corpus and Elle Woods and all kinds of fun. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, whatever your heart desires. And we drink. And we will see you next time on the Twist Happy Hour. Cheers.
Cheers.